We talk it out, no time to waste. Face to face, we set the pace. Hey, hey. Love so strong, no need to race. We hold it tight in every space, making it last. Oh, making it last. Yeah, yeah. Through the future, through the past. Building it high, keeping it fast. Communication, making it last. Making it last. Oh, making it last. Yeah, yeah. Through the future, through the past. Building it high, keeping it fast. Communication, making it last.
It's time for another conversation. Welcome to Making It Last podcast, where it's all about helping us to have better relationships, not just with ourselves, but with other people. And this time around, I'm talking with Dr. Gary Sprouse. I like how he said he wanted to be described, the less stressed doc.
There you go. I like it.
Welcome. Welcome,
Thank you.
Gary.
Thank you for having me on.
You have a book, and we're seeing it right behind you. So tell us a little bit about that, but before I introduce the topic.
Yeah, so the book is called Highway to Your Happy Place, a roadmap to less stress. And the main concepts of the book are most people don't know. When I say to them, hey, what would you be if you had less stress? They're like, I don't know. I never got that far. So I had to come up with this idea of a happy place. And as I did that, I found out that every happy place has the same rooms, but they're just decorated differently. So when I started identifying the different rooms, I was like, oh, here's the different rooms: gratitude, pleasure, contentment, fulfillment, acceptance, appreciation, safety, hope. Wow, it's a great place. And when you know where it is, you go, oh, I can get there. That's a good place. And then you go, but wait, there's these stresses that are keeping me from getting there. So the first half of the book is on your happy place. The second half of the book is on the stresses that are keeping you from being in your happy place. And my insight, and that's what led to the book, was that as a doctor, I'm a primary care doctor. I'm used to writing prescriptions that say, hey, here's a blood pressure for your medicine. It's great medicine, might have a few side effects. We'll deal with that, right? When I applied that idea to our brain and our mind, what I came up with is like, oh, we have these incredible skills. Oh, but they have some side effects. So we have the skill of envisioning the future. The side effect is we have to worry about it. So we could do what psychologists tell us, say, just live for today and then not worry, and you're great, but then you lose your side effect of envisioning the future, which is an incredible skill. So what my book's about is how to keep the skill of envisioning the future and lose the side effect of worrying about it.
Good. Thanks for sharing that. Now, what we're going to be unpacking, though, is a 4-step process to reduce guilt and obtain forgiveness. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So in the book, what I talk about, there are stresses that we have that are the ingredients of what makes the events in our life stressful. So if you lose a spouse, you might worry about what's going to happen. You feel guilty you didn't do this. You regret doing that. You're overwhelmed. Right? So each chapter is a different stress. So one of the chapters is on guilt. And I had to differentiate guilt from regret because they have some similarities, but they're very different things. So guilt is you did something wrong and you feel shame. But that implies that you have some sense of right and wrong. Because if you don't have a sense of right and wrong, there's no shame and guilt. So my dog will be upset if he pees in the house, right? He'll have some shame reaction, but he doesn't understand it as being wrong. He just knows that he's going to get yelled at or kicked or whatever for doing something he shouldn't do. But humans have, oh, you broke a rule. But the rule could be a written rule like a law, or it could be an unwritten rule like some fashion statement day. So I play basketball on Thursday nights. And what the young kids come to the court with, they're in sandals and flip-flops and mismatched socks and weird I'm like, what? That is so wrong. Like that, if I wore that when I was a kid, I would have been laughed out of the gym. So but that's the way it is now, right? So right and wrong have a fluidity to it because it can change over time. We're seeing that in the United States, like where we were 6 months ago is way different than where we're at now because somebody in power has been changing the rules, right? So the first thing that happens with guilt is you have to say, did I do something wrong? And what I find is a lot of times, no, people are feeling guilty when they didn't really do something wrong. So as an example, I would do seminars and would have women in the room and it would have men, so half and half, right? And I'd
Mm-hmm.
say, do me a favor, write down something that you felt that you did wrong, that you felt guilty about. And the women in the room were going like writing, like a whole bunch of things, right? The men in the room were staring at the ceiling going, I think, So clearly men and women have a different response to when they talk about guilt. Every single woman said, I feel guilty that I didn't spend enough time with my kids. Every single one. And you're like, wait, what? Not spending time with your kids. Why did you not spend time with your kids? Well, I had to work because I had to make money to pay the bills and the mortgage and stuff like that. I'm like, well, then that's not wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. You just made a choice. And so you had to survive. You had to have money. So could you have made different choices? Sure. But you didn't break any rules. You didn't do anything wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
That was a guy's perspective. Okay. Now, here's a woman that comes up to me from the seminar afterwards. She said, Dr. Sprouse, you got that wrong. And I go, what do you mean? She goes, well, I get that you're saying that there's choice. And so really that comes down to is regret, that the choices that you made, you might have made different choices. But for women, one of the unwritten rules is you should be at home taking care of your kids. So when you're not, and you're out there working, then you are technically, in their mind, doing something wrong because you're not taking care of your kids. And that unwritten rule for women is they should be at home taking care of the kids.
Okay.
So, in effect, that event, how much time you spent, that balance that you get between life and work and your family, trying to get that balance does include some regret, does include some guilt because you weren't doing what that unwritten rule of society was saying you should do. So but what I found was then you had to figure out what's wrong. How do you decide what's wrong? And it turns out it's not so simple as like this is wrong forever.
Right. Yeah.
It's not that simple. And what I realized was that we have to have a set of rules that were set aside. We have to have a goal for that. You have to have like a community that's identified. So like I live in the state of Maryland, so that has a set of rules. But I also live in Chester, Maryland, in the county of Queen Anne's, that has its own set. I live in the United States, that has its own set, right? So you have to look at what group you're in. Then you have to look at the goals of the group. Then you have to see what the rules are that have been set down. And then the last piece is you have to have a judge. And the judge is there to make close calls. Like if you guys can't decide which is left or right or wrong, then the judge is given that power to say, okay, this is right, this is wrong. So you have to define those four things before you even talk about right and wrong. Okay. And what I've seen is when you talk about religion, and I'm not sure what religion you are, but when you talk about Christianity and some like Islam, God is the ultimate judge. And it's like the nice thing about God is he's not around. So he can't be bought off, right? He can't be, and he's like, his words have been written down for 2,000 years. So it's like, okay, they're there. That's what we're going to deal with. Now, what I have found is people interpret the rules. They'll interpret the words differently. So they end up with different conclusions. So like in one church, women can be ministers, and in another church, no, that's not going to happen, right? So they read the same book, but they came to different conclusions because they had different judges, right?
Making it last. Oh, making it last. Yeah. Through the future, through the past. Building it high.
We're here having this conversation, the whole idea of guilt and forgiveness, and especially for forgiveness. For a lot of us, that is so difficult to do, especially for us to forgive ourselves. But we're going to continue the conversation right after this break from a word from our partners.
Langdo Language Institute was created to meet your language and communication needs. All of our packages were created just for you. We are passionate about language and dedicated to your success. We offer the CSEC English program, the Study Buddy program, the Get Ahead with English program, and the Business Communication program. Contact us at 767-285-0938 or email us at landolanguage@gmail.com. Because the real question is, how can we help you?
For all your events such as educational forums, workshops, book launches, weddings, and more, contact Noreen Daly, the ultimate MC and event host. Visit NoreenDaily.com or follow her on Instagram at NoreenDailyJam. Noreen Daily, creating long-lasting memories.
I recently have been coached by the great Miss Noreen Daly.
This woman has been full of moments of, I see your potential and I see your dreams that you're afraid to dream. So let's get there and let's do it.
Noreen was the one who recognized my flaw, but she didn't leave it there. She led me along the journey of developing my communication skills.
She was able to point out some of my weaknesses that I didn't yet notice.
She exposed me to so many fundamental pillars of communication.
I pray that you have people in your life who are as supportive as she is, who are as much of a gift as she is.
And I 100% recommend Miss Noreen Daly as your coach.
The truth is, I am who I am today because of Noreen's coaching.
Find her. Seriously, find her.
Services include communications consultancy, one-on-one coaching, public speaking and debate training, leadership and team building sessions, plus much more. Visit NoreenDaily.com for more info. Noreen Daily, redefining the way you communicate.
Let's continue the conversation.
Making it last. Oh, making it last. Yeah.
Hear what it is, though. You started out saying one, and then I think you went through all of them. So I just want you to backtrack so we can identify them. So the first one was, what did I do wrong? What's the second one?
So the first thing you have to do is identify the group that you're in.
Okay.
So here's an example. So I'm a physician, right? So if I went to the physicians conference in Chicago and I brought a gun with me, that would not be a good thing. But if I was a SEAL team member of the Marine Corps and I was going out on a mission and I brought a gun with me, you're like, okay, good idea.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So you have to identify the group that you're going to be identified with.
Okay.
Then you have to identify the goal of the group. So in the physicians group, their goal is to give information to different doctors. In the SEAL team group, they're out there trying to hunt down some fugitive or something, right?
Okay.
So again, if I brought that gun and I started shooting people, that would be really wrong. But for the SEAL team, if they start shooting somebody, medals and they get a building named after them, because it's like different goals, different groups.
Okay.
But the same act is wrong in one group and right in another.
The other, yeah. And 3 and 4?
The third thing is you have to have the rules set down. So I don't know if there's a rule in the medical society that says don't bring a gun and shoot people, but I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, that would be an unwritten rule, I'm guessing. But in the SEAL team, there's very specific rules. Like, okay, you can kill the bad people, but you can't kill like a citizen out on the street that ran into you, like cut you off in traffic or something. Right. So there's very rules that are set down. But then the last is then there's a judge. And so the judge, so we had this happen when we had Vietnam here. So there was a group of soldiers that went in and killed a bunch of people in a village. And at the time, they were having PTSD and things were crazy. And I don't know who else was going. But what happened was they were brought back to the United States out of the war, out of the jungle. And now they're in a little courtroom and the judge is now presiding and going, okay, well, you guys did this. And as a judge, I've decided this is out of bounds. You shouldn't have done that. But the judge was given that power. So we give our judges the power to say, yes, right or wrong. We do this with our umpires and our referees and our sporting events. It's like, we go, okay, we're going to give you this power. You have to be good at it. And you have to practice and you have to study and you have to read and you have to be reasonable and you can't be biased as best as possible. But you get the power to say right, wrong.
So with all of this then now, how then do you obtain forgiveness?
Okay, so once you've decided I did something wrong, so I'm going to use some of my patients that had problems with addictions. So say they drank too much and while they were drinking, they might have hit somebody. They might have gambled their money away. They might have, spent it all on booze, right? Somewhere at a bar somewhere. So when they finally decide they're going to become sober, there's a lot of guilt there's a lot of things that are like, oh, I did that wrong. I should not have done that. I should not have hit my spouse. I should not have spent all our money so that we had to get kicked out of our house. Whatever the situation was. So they feel guilty about that. So what I say to them is, one, did you do something wrong? And the answer in this situation is, yeah, society says you shouldn't drink so much that you get people in trouble and hit people. That's wrong. Okay. So yes, you broke a rule, but it's in the past. So you did it then. Okay. So you can't change it. You can't go back and go, nope, it's not, it's done. So what guilt is designed to do is to get people to change so that you can't change the past, but you can change the future. So guilt is designed to say, hey, what you did was wrong, but we want you in the future to do, instead of drinking too much, we don't want you to drink at all. So as long as you're not drinking, then guilt did what it was supposed to do and made you change from drinking too much to not drinking at all. So then that way, if guilt did what it was supposed to do and you're not drinking, then the guilt should be less because you changed the way society wanted you to change. So that was a good thing. So you should feel some accomplishment in that you did what guilt told you to do, which was to change your behavior. The people that we are the most nervous about is the guy who kills somebody and he gets in the court and goes, I don't care. I'd do it again. And you're like, what? What is the matter with you? Why do you not have any shame? Why are you not even trying to change? Why do you not have remorse? That's the person that scares the crap out of us because they don't feel guilt. That makes us nervous because we're like, then what are we going to do to shape their behavior? Because we're using shame and guilt to shape people's behavior. Now, I also find that and I talk about this 4-step process. And I told you earlier, it comes from a book called The Book of Forgiveness. And it was by a reverend named Desmond Tutu and his daughter, Mpho, M-P-H-O. Okay. And he was very instrumental when the apartheid fell apart in South Africa and they were changing roles. So they went from a white dominated government to a black dominated government. Okay. So there, a lot of the blacks had been repressed for decades, probably centuries, and they were angry and they wanted retribution. And Tutus got up and said, no, that doesn't help. It's not going to work. So they came up with this process that they used, and it was very effective. So here's the process. First off is you tell your story. Okay, so telling your story, you're not hiding, because one of the problems with guilt is people tend to hide the story. So somebody who's been abused by their uncle, they don't want to tell anybody. So they just feel this guilt inside. So the guilt eats them up because they're not telling anybody. So the first step is you got to tell people, but you want to tell somebody who's going to be empathetic, sympathetic, understanding, and not negatively judgmental. Like, so a lot of times people have said, oh, my uncle, abused me, and they're telling it to their mom, and the mom goes, oh, you're wrong. That couldn't have happened. And you're like, well, wait, what? Yeah. So, you want to talk to somebody who is going to be non-judgmental. But telling the story is important. So as a physician, I would have patients come to me all the time. And in the course of our visit about high blood pressure, diabetes, they would tell me these very intimate stories. And you could see that they walked out of the office feeling better because they were able to share with somebody. So they weren't just holding the secret inside of them forever. And that was a very big release, and it made them feel better. They knew there was somebody they could talk to about this issue.
Have you applied your own 4-step process to your life? And if so, how?
Yeah. So it's like that, because one of the things that I find is that 4-step process, the difficulty is it's one thing to forgive somebody else, like in the South African example, they were forgiving the whites that were politicians that were causing problems. So they were able to forgive them. But they didn't have, the last step is what they call renew or release. The last step is going, okay, I'm going to forgive you, but I'm not going to have a relationship with you anymore. You don't have that option when you're talking about yourself. That's the problem, because you're always going to be there. So that makes it more, it makes it more difficult because you don't have that option of releasing because you're stuck with yourself. But it makes the other 2 steps just as important. So you have to tell your story, then you have to name the hurt. So the story is, in South Africa, was like, you politicians, you made rules that we couldn't do certain things, and that was really bad. And you put people in jail, and you killed people. And then naming the hurt was like, that hurt. That made me feel bad. That made me afraid to walk out in the street because I thought a policeman might kill me or put me in jail. That's the hurt. Like, no. So the person who's gotten abused by our uncle, like, he did things to me that he shouldn't have done. And that made me feel bad. I do not like that. The idea of forgiveness is not to say, oh, nothing happened and it's okay, we'll just move on. No, it's to say, here's the story and here's how it hurt me. But then the next step, and this is the important step, is you have to ask for forgiveness. Because when people are bitter and angry, it just hurts themselves. It's like I've seen people who have done something wrong, and the person that they did the wrong to was mad at them. But it didn't change that the thing had happened. It just made them bitter, angry people for the rest of their life. So the act of forgiveness, a lot of times, is for the person who's giving the forgiveness, not so much for the person who's asking for forgiveness. Because, like, there was an example, and I'll give you real quick. There was a guy who killed a 20-year-old person. Okay, the 20-year-old's mother went to the trial, and the guy got put in jail. Okay. And so she was all happy, but she felt she was bad. She was never going to forgive this guy, blah, 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 right? During the time he was in jail, she ended up having to visit him for some reason. And they started talking. And what she realized was, this is a guy who grew up in a crappy household, had no hope of being better. And this was a product of what happened to his upbringing. And so she learned to forgive this guy. Okay. And so she said, you know what? I forgive you that you killed my son, because it's just hurting me to be bitter and angry with you. And the guy was like, oh my God, thank you so much. And so they started talking and they developed a relationship. So she decided to renew the relationship. And so they were now on a different footing, because instead of him being the murderer of her son, now he's just a kid who was disadvantaged and was a product of his environment. And so she started talking with him and he started talking with her. And then after he got out of jail, they ended up having this unique relationship where she was sort of a mother figure to him, which is what he needed, right? And so he was her son figure to her. And so now she got a son back and he got a mother, and it was good. And it all happened because they were willing to tell the story, name the hurt, ask for forgiveness, and then they renewed the relationship. And it became a strong relationship because it started out with honesty, and it started out with them knowing where they were coming. I see in relationships where people are getting divorced and someone has cheated on the other person. So they've broken the trust. And so the person who's been cheated on might get to some point where they go, you know what? I forgive you, but I can't ever trust you again. So we're not going to renew this relationship. We're just going to move on. Or they can go, you know what? I understand that you cheated on me because there was something needing that you weren't getting in our relationship. So I think of this cheating as a symptom. So let's work on that and get the need met. And then let's get back to our relationship so we can be together for our kids and whatever other financial reasons that we got going on. And it's like, so that's the benefit of, like, you can renew a release. And that's you decide. So with the couples that decide to stay, a lot of times the relationship is better because now they've weathered the storm of some infidelity. They've changed their relationship, that they're now more honest with each other. They've identified a need that was not being met in the relationship and fixed that. And they fixed their communication skills. And so now their relationship is actually on a better place than it was before.
Final question. Of all of that, what do you think is the most difficult for people to do of that four-step process, and what then can be done to change that?
Well, what I've seen from humans is that the most difficult thing is that forgiveness. Okay. Because in our society, we're designed to be collective. But in that collectivity, we go, there's very strong rules about what you can and can't do. And when you break the rules, there's shame is the stick that we use to hurt people, to say, don't do that, right? Yeah. And so we're programmed to inflict shame on people when they don't do something right. We're not programmed to go, okay, we forgive you. Like, that's not what we were designed to do. It's something that we can do. So I think is the hardest, because, but I will tell you, it's the most fulfilling, because when people are angry and bitter, it just eats up their life. It colors everything they see. When they let that go, like a burden is taken on. I had a patient. She decided when she was 11 years old, her mom got beat up by her dad. And I said, well, what did you do? She goes, well, I grabbed my dad's arm and I tried to throw him off, but he just threw me off into the corner. And for 50 years, I felt guilty that I didn't do enough for my mom.
Mm.
And I was like, wait, what? So I said, let's get this straight. First off, you're 11 years old. Your dad's 200 pounds heavier than you, and he was drunk at the time. Like, what did you think you were going to do as an 11-year-old? You're now a 50, 60-year-old lady. As an 11-year-old, what do you think an 11-year-old is going to do? She goes, well, I don't know. And I'm like, you were a hero. You were afraid, and yet you still went out and tried to help your mom as best as you could.
Mm-hmm.
And so then she looked at me, and when she heard that reframing that I didn't do anything wrong and that I actually was a hero and helped my mom as best as I could as an 11-year-old, she said to me, she looked me right in the eye and said, Dr. Sprouse. I'm like, what? She goes, oh my God, I feel like this weight is off my shoulder. I'm like, yeah, I bet so. Sorry, it chokes me up when I tell the story. I go, you for 50 years, you've been holding on to this guilt that you think you didn't do enough to help your mom. And like now you realize, wait, no, I did everything I could as an 11-year-old to help my mom. And so carrying that around, man, that does a lot to you. It lowers your shoulders, it lowers your body, it lowers your self-esteem. So when it got released, she was like, oh my God, Dr. Sprouse, I feel so much better. Thank you. Yeah. And I'm like, that's the power of forgiveness.
Yeah, yeah. And I believe that's an excellent note to end on. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Gary.
Well, thank you for having me on. And we have to do this again because there's 5 more chapters in the book. So.
Not a problem. Not a problem. This was Make It Last podcast, where it's all about helping us to have better relationships, not just with ourselves, with other people. I'm Noreen Daly. Until next time.
We talk it out, no time to waste. Face to face, we set the pace. Love so strong, no need to race. We hold it tight in every space, making it last. Oh, making it last. Yeah, yeah. Through the future, through the past. Building it high, keeping it fast. Communication, making it last. Making it last. Oh, making it last. Yeah, yeah. Through the future, through the past. Building it high, keeping it fast. Communication, making it last.